viable. Okay, is he just not starting? Okay,
We had a slight delay. Go ahead.
okay. Blight affects all areas around us. It can be a cancer killing, it could be cancer killing for all of our viable neighborhoods, and resources and organizations can help. Join us as we discuss blight in Memphis and Shelby County today. I am Gail Jones Carson, your host for Empowering Sustainable Neighborhoods. Today's subject is shedding light on blight. This is our fourth webinar and the first one for this year. We have some very interesting guests today who will be talking with us about blight and how to deal with blight in our community. Our first guest today will be is too much stuff. Mr. David Burgess, who is a graduate of the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. Mr. Burgess is presently the program coordinator for Memphis City Beautiful. Memphis City Beautiful is a City of Memphis agency and beautification commission within a division of Public Works Department of Neighborhood Improvement. Mr. Burgess also serves as a co-chair of the Blight Elimination Steering Team's Community Engagement Committee. Mr. Burgess joined the City Beautiful team in July of 2018 and enjoys working with neighborhood associations and helping to connect citizens with resources pertaining to litter prevention, waste reduction, recycling, and community beautification. Our next guest is Eddie Jones Jr., who works as a City of Memphis Code Enforcement Supervisor and is a former police officer with the Memphis Police Department, where he served on the TAC unit. Mr. Jones has been a dedicated employee of the City of Memphis for more than 20 years. Mr. Jones also serves as a commissioner on the Shelby County Commission. He was elected to his second term in 2018. Our next guest is Steve Lockwood, who has more than 2 decades of successful experience in multiple aspects of community development, housing, and neighborhood revitalization. Mr. Lockwood has worked with the Fraser Community Development Corporation, Valentine Evergreen Community Development Corporation, and the University of Memphis School of Urban Affairs and Public Policy. I want to thank each of you all for being here with us today. And we will start with Mr. Lockwood on talking about giving us a brief overview of some of the things that you want to share with us today and some of the work that you do in our community.
Thank you. I guess you can hear me.
Yes.
Again, my name is Steve Lockwood, and I'm now the interim executive director of the Blight Authority of Memphis, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what that means. By the way, we usually call the Blight Authority of Memphis BAM, B-A-M, so I'm going to refer to it as that in the future. Blight means a lot of different things, all the way from trash pickup through decaying buildings, and BAM has a particular place in that food chain. We primarily deal with abandoned land that is in our disinvested neighborhoods. We have special powers. We're not governmental, but we were formed by the state of Tennessee and the city of Memphis. We have special powers to acquire abandoned land, hold that land tax-free, maintain it while we have it, and then dispose of it in the best interest of those neighborhoods. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But essentially, we're ramping up, and it's a pretty new agency. We're ramping up to acquire abandoned land in neighborhoods. As Gail mentioned, I worked for 20 years in Fraser, but in neighborhoods like Fraser, but South Memphis neighborhoods, North Memphis neighborhoods, Hyde Park, Orange Mound, in those communities. the Memphis 3.0 plan, really the major message from the 3.0 plan that the city did over the last few years was build up, not out, which meant to bring new development into our communities. And BAM can be a major part of that, bring new housing into the neighborhoods that we all care about. It's our plan over the next year to acquire about 240 vacant lots from the Shelby County Land Bank and to put those back into service, which means turn those over to developers, either for-profit developers or nonprofit developers, to build new housing on them. And our objective really is to do what the neighborhood wants in those areas. So our main objective is to build home ownership in the neighborhoods, and to do that using small local minority and women-owned businesses. But some neighborhoods want some rental units as well, say, affordable duplexes. Other neighborhoods, many neighborhoods want affordable housing for low-income folk, so that keeping the prices low, but some want middle-income housing to bring in some middle-income people into their community and to provide some diversity in the community. So we work with neighborhood representatives to figure out what they want in those neighborhoods. As I said, we're just really getting started. So we're starting some initiatives, particularly in Hyde Park, Fraser, and areas of South Memphis, to look at the land available. And for those who are listening, we would encourage neighborhood partners to look at the land that's available and let us know what's priority land that they would like to see redeveloped. We've just developed a really great interactive map that has the Shelby County land and the city land, that is city surplus land, available. The address is too long to give you, but I put my email address in the chat box. And if you would like to have access to that map so you could look at your neighborhood and click on lots, let me know, and I'll send that address out to you. So as we acquire lots, we'll maintain those, but our real objective is to turn those over to neighborhood-based organizations, be they for-profit or nonprofit, who are going to build constructive, primarily single-family owner-occupied houses in that land. And so we're looking for partners to do that. We have partners. We've been working with some of the community development corporations already. We've been working with some for-profit developers, but we're looking for more. So again, if you are, or you're in communication with somebody who wants to be and has the qualifications to build houses in those neighborhoods, you can contact me at my email address in the chat, and we'll go from there. There's been an awful lot of talk lately about neighborhoods being taken over by, and really being adversely affected by investors and speculators, both housing and land, as well as commercial for that matter. And that's absolutely true. And I think a lot of us in the community development field have been frustrated that we don't have many tools to slow that down and to tip the ratio back towards home ownership, because we've lost so many homeowners since the crash of the mortgage market in 2008 or something like that. The real reason why I agreed to take the job at BAM was that we have tools to compete and win against investors and speculators on issues of land in our neighborhoods. And what we've been saying is that we'd like to be the designated shopper for community groups to tell us what land is important to you. We're also working to gain the power of eminent domain for properties where you can't find the owner. We all know that there's lots in our neighborhoods that are covered in old tires, and if you try to find the owner, you can't find them. And those lots, there have been really no tools to address those lots and figure out what to do with them. In collaboration with the Community Reinvestment Agency in Uptown, we're going to have the ability to take those lots, have them appraised, put the amount of the value, let's say the lot's worth $7,000, put $7,000 in deposit at the, I believe it's the Chancery Court. And then BAM will own the property and be able to put it back into use. If the owner ever shows up, the funds that the property is worth are at the court. So nobody's seizing any property. They're just dealing with properties that have been really abandoned. So again, we'll be asking community groups to say what parcels of land are really important for you. As I said, I'm pretty new at the Blight Authority of Memphis, but I'm very excited about the work that we're doing. And I think that it's a tool that has been needed for a long time and has really not been there. And we're happy to be working with other entities to be able to handle the land. We get asked sometime, how are we different than the Shelby County Land Bank? And I'll say this quickly, that Shelby County Land Bank really is not empowered to make decisions on behalf of what's best for the neighborhood. It's their job. If they own a lot, if they're asking $4,000 and you have $4,000, they will sell it to anybody, and that's what they're required to do. And we're not required to do that. We've already turned down offers of people who want to buy land that want to park trucks on it in a residential neighborhood. Well, I know that's illegal, but people do it anyway. But we say respectfully, no, thank you. That's not the purpose we have in mind for this land. And we won't sell to investors and speculators. And again, our highest and best use for the neighborhood is what our mission is, and using our special powers in order to do that on behalf of neighborhoods. My 8 minutes is up. I hope that you can understand how exciting the work of the Blight Authority of Memphis is, and feel free to contact me at my email address if you'd like further information. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that information. So now we will move to
Gail,
yes.
can Steve repeat his email address again? And so I think someone said they were asking for his email address, and we just have their website.
No, that's my email address, but I'm happy to, I will tell it to you, Beverly.
Okay.
In the chat, it says steve@blightauthoritymemphis.org. There's no of in there. It's just steve@blightauthoritymemphis.org. Thanks.
Okay, so now we will move to Mr. Burgess, who's the program coordinator for the city of Memphis, coordinator for Memphis City Beautiful. Mr. Burgess, thank you for being with us.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here. And I'll tell you a little bit about Memphis City Beautiful and our mission and history, and some programs that we have that are geared towards litter and fighting blight. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Our 3 primary focus areas, or you can say 4, but we kind of lump 2 of them together, are litter prevention, waste reduction, recycling, and community beautification. For those of you who don't know, that Memphis City Beautiful was commissioned in 1930 by Mayor Crump. And the first job of Memphis City Beautiful was to transform Riverside Drive from the city's municipal dump into the first stage of what you see now, where people could live, parks, public spaces, things of that nature. So after that commenced, then Memphis City Beautiful was given $1 million to do that. They did an awesome job. So Mayor Crump decided to make them the official beautification commission for the city of Memphis. Next slide. Today, I wanted to talk about a few ways to beautify your neighborhood, and these are my top 5. These aren't the only 5, but these are the 5 that I think are the easiest for people to do, and it's resources between us and other organizations. There's resources to do all of these in Memphis. So the first one is community cleanups and cleanouts, which is probably the most prevalent. The second most prevalent would be creating beautiful public spaces, and you can do that by almost any means, and I'll elaborate on that soon. Planning and landscaping, which is one of our favorites. We do a lot of that around the city as well. Public art displays, I'll elaborate on those more. And reducing, reuse, recycle, in that order. Some people say recycle, reduce, reuse, but reduce, reuse, recycle in that order is the proper way to help beautify your neighborhood. We can go to the next slide. Community cleanups and cleanouts. And I know we get a lot of calls, so I know you guys see a lot of the litter and illegal dumping going on in the city. So this is one way that you can help beautify your neighborhood through a community cleanup or a cleanout. These are just a few pictures of some cleanups. You see Mayor Strickland, and some of you know Steve Schuler, and we got volunteers, and we got Councilwoman Patrice Robinson on the picture down there as well. We can go to the next slide. Now let's talk about some of the reasons why the cleanups are needed. One of the main causes of litter are untarped or uncovered loads. Some people don't know that according to code, that if you do have a load of rubbish or a load of things that you're preparing to dispose of, it should be covered. Many people don't cover it, and as they drive down the road, those things blow all over the place and end up being a responsibility of you and me to clean up after. Next slide. Another form of litter or clutter in neighborhoods are unlawful evictions, where they take all of someone's personal belongings for whatever reason and place them curbside, as in the picture that you see. And this stuff is, people pick through it, it gets blown all over the place, and it causes a pretty unsightly mess. Next slide. Cigarette litter. This is the most prevalent form of litter in the United States and the world. Over 1.5 trillion cigarette butts are littering our roadways and waterways currently. Next slide. Clogged storm drains. You're wondering why the water is pooling up in your neighborhood and mosquitoes are pretty bad. It's because your storm drain is blocked and the water can't pass through correctly. And those plastic bottles and paper, all this stuff ends up in our waterways if it goes down the drain. Next slide. And here's a few directions on if you want to plan your own community cleanup, and you can always reach out to us. And these are pretty self-explanatory as well. The first step will be to assess the litter problem in your area. We call it a windshield study. You can call it a ride through. And that's when you just ride through and see the areas that need to be, that need cleanup the most. And that way you can map out your cleanup route. Next, I would say determine which areas. Now go back to the previous slide. The next way will be to determine which areas of your community need cleaning, organize volunteers in your cleanup locations, your supplies, and the method of disposing of the trash afterwards, which we can help with. You send that to me and I'll get it picked up by the city. You will execute the cleanup and then you will dispose of any trash and debris. You don't have to do that yourself. You send it, take a picture and send it to me and I'll have solid waste come pick it up. Next slide. Community cleanouts, and this is also known as dumpster day. Some of you have probably seen advertising from the city of Memphis and from us about dumpster days. We're going to each of the council districts. This Saturday, we'll be in District 7. We'll be at the location of the former Manassas High School. It's on Firestone. So if you have any unwanted items, you're welcome to bring it out. But this is a way for community members and citizens to get rid of unwanted household items, toys, mattresses, without leaving them on the side of the road or putting them in front of their house and it's sitting there forever. So we're trying to help alleviate some of that and try to help our communities look beautiful. Next slide. Creating beautiful public spaces. I know some of you guys have seen these in different communities, and it doesn't have to be downtown. You can create these anywhere. You can create them in your backyard. You can create them on a vacant lot. And if you want to do that, reach out to Mr. Steve Lockwood and he can let you know what they would allow the use of that public space to be. Next slide. Here's a few examples of beautiful public places. You have pocket parks. It can be a gateway sign like you see here for Valleywood and Central Gardens, sitting and gathering areas, food truck parks. Be creative. There's many different beautiful public spaces you can create in a community, and it really changes the look of the community. Next slide. Planting and landscaping. This is a fairly inexpensive way to beautify a public space. Like these flowers that you see down here on the bottom, I guarantee you they weren't very expensive. You can get a flat of flowers, which is about 18 flowers for about $10 to $15. So 5 or 6 flats is probably what you see planted in this picture on the left, and you see how beautiful it looks. Next slide. Here are a few different plantings you can do. You can spruce up your right-of-ways if you know don't know what the right-of-ways are. It could be a median, it could be the area along the sidewalk, that strip of grass in front of your house. You could plant trees, you could plant flowers around your neighborhood signs. You can reclaim vacant lots and plant a edible forest or community garden. So these are just a few inexpensive things that you can do to help beautify your community. Next slide. Also keep your lawn manicured and reach out to your neighbors and see if they can do the same thing. If your neighbor is elderly or unable to do it, help your neighbor. It doesn't take, a bunch of money or a lot of time to cut your neighbor's yard for them. If your neighbor's the only house on the street that has high grass, help them out, cut it. You don't have to report them to 311. These are just some little small things that'll help your community look beautiful. You could also add mulch or decorative stones, spruce up a flower bed, things of that nature. Next slide. Public art displays. Now, these are, not everyone wants to see this in their neighborhood, but some neighborhoods do like them. Soulsville, you see this one. I love Soulsville. You see this one in the downtown area on the side of schools. So some areas are keen on them, some aren't. So you just have to make sure you get with your neighborhood association and make sure this is something that they want to see in the neighborhood. Next. Here's a few examples of public art displays, murals, and you can paint them on vacant structures like vacant buildings or walls that are hard to clean. Something like I don't know if you've seen in Fraser, I believe it was Mr. Archie Willis had art displays painted on the windows of boarded up houses. Is that correct, Steve? I think that was Archie that did that, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, it was Archie and others who painted windows on an empty apartment complex, David, that has actually, I just noticed, since been torn down, right across the street from MLK High School. Yeah.
Correct. That is correct. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. But also sculptures. We have artists that we've worked with on cleanups that actually repurpose old metal, wood, things of that nature, and they make beautiful sculptures similar to what you see here. Next slide. And the final category is reduce, reuse, and recycle. Next. Here's an example of reuse. This is on the left, you see a greenhouse that was abandoned for nearly 10 years and it was overgrown with poison ivy, as you see in the front. It was trees growing in it, it was wildlife, and it was slated to be torn down. And my director came up with the idea of us repurposing it and making it a functional greenhouse. So with work and volunteers, we were able to get it to what you see on the right, where we can actually house plants in it now. So you don't have to tear stuff down. You don't have to recreate all the time. If you can save a structure or you can save something and make something beautiful out of it, that's the way to go. Next. Simple recycling is another way to beautify your community. If you see cans and plastic bottles, things that you know can be recycled, recycle them. You don't have to put them in the trash where they'll end up in the landfill, and no second stream uses can come from that once it hits the landfill. And look at that face. That face says you need to recycle. Next slide. This is an example of what happens when those clogged storm drains, all of that plastic and trash. Some of these items, of course, didn't go down a storm drain, but a lot of it went down a storm drain and it ends up at McKellar Lake. So this is what happens. You go out there, you see this, and we typically, before COVID, we would have 1 or 2 cleanups a year at McKellar. We're actually planning some of those as well. And you'll see them posted on our website soon. If you want to get involved, we'd love to have you. Next slide. And this was post one of the cleanups at McKellar. We took the plastics and we recycled what we could. These are the River Warriors. They used to work with us. A lot of them have graduated now. So we're trying to find another group that is as dedicated as these young people to help us keep McKellar Lake clean, because it definitely needs a little TLC right now. Next slide. And this is an example of recycling as well. We work with Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. We were able to recover 36,000 illegally dumped tires. We used those tires to become the surfacing of the recycled tire walking and bicycle trail. And it'll be the longest of its kind in the world. It's 2.9 miles. So this is another example of taking something that's been illegally dumped and repurposing it as something that's actually cheaper than concrete and lasts longer than concrete. Next slide. And here are a few of the services that we offer. We do have more services. I was just trying to get some of the stuff that pertain to community cleanup and beautification. We can assist you with volunteers, and we can assist you with all of the tools you need for your community cleanups. We can help provide community service workers when they are available. I will say since the pandemic, they aren't as readily available as they used to be. We can help plan your cleanups for you, provide volunteer support, as I said before. We can help with the trash pickups after the cleanups. We have a tool bank. Many don't know that we have a tool bank. You can borrow any tool that pertains to cleanup, the claims that pertains to litter prevention and waste reduction. We've got gardening tools as well. We have litter boxes and recycle bins for fairs and festivals. This is our 52Clean hotline, and the number is literally 52Clean. If you see someone littering from a vehicle, I'll just get their tag, the make and model of their car, and what you observe them littering, report it to us, and we'll send them a letter that's signed by MPD. We have mulch and compost for neighborhood associations and community projects. If you want a speaker to come to your school or brochures pertaining to litter prevention, waste reduction, or recycling, we have some of those. We have a driver's education video that we can show to young people and older people. It's a pretty fun video, and it kind of goes through some of the things that I talked about in this presentation. We have a community grant program. We also do a litter index where we drive the entire city and score it. So if you would like to see that data, we can actually show you that data also. Next slide. And here's the information. If you have any questions, concerns, this has our Instagram, our Twitter, Facebook page, our phone number. We've got an email address, city.beautiful@memphistennessee.gov. Or you can go to our website and find all of the resources that I just spoke about. One click and it'll put those resources in your hands. That's all that I have. If you guys have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Burgess, for that valuable information that you presented to us. We will move now to Eddie Jones, who is the City of Memphis Code Enforcement Supervisor. Commissioner Jones.
Yep. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Well, good. Did have a slide presentation. I sent that. Don't know if you all got it, but I could generally just go through what it is that we do. So code enforcement is up under neighborhood improvement. Neighborhood improvement has grown the part directly with certain blight remediation. So well, neighborhood improvement, we have our ground services. Ground services is the cutting of grass on vacant properties. After that, we've now formed a commercial team, and they deal with vacant commercial buildings that's blighted, and so it's addressed that way. We also have an environmental enforcement team. Environmental enforcement deals primarily with illegal dumping. And as you can see around the city, we have a lot of illegal dumping. So we have a group of inspectors that are laser focused on various blight remediation projects. So code enforcement. What I want to say as it relates to code enforcement, what we do, how we do it, kind of go through some of the processes that's out there. So under the code enforcement side, we have two segments. So we have a morning shift and then we have a second shift. Our second shift generally works from Tuesdays through Saturday, and they work from 10 to 6 and on Saturdays 7 to 3. It gives us a better opportunity to be able to catch those people and to give them the proper paperwork and even get them in court, because most of them are generally home on Saturdays. So that works well for us in that manner. The regular day shift, they work from 8 to, and so that's generally, that's the makeup of code enforcement under neighborhood improvement. Now I'm going to go through and sort of break some of that down, kind of show you what it is that we do, how we do it. If you were to take all the city council 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, we have inspectors subdivided all throughout all of those districts, and each one of them have a specific portion of that district that they have to oversee. And the biggest thing that goes on with us when it comes to that is the way it's done, the way that it's done, sort of wow, they're focused in certain communities. So we try to concentrate and make sure that we can address all the blights by sub districts in a full district. So now you kind of get what we do. All right, now what most people don't know or what they don't realize is the type of violations that we deal with. So we deal with junky yards. We deal with dilapidated structures. We deal with vacant structures. I mean, you could be living in a structure and it has problems. We deal with that. We deal with if it's an occupied property, got to keep your yard cut, clean, all of that. We deal with raw sewage, electrical issues, and most of those come from apartment complexes that we deal with, because we deal with those as well. And at the end of the day, we deal with, here's another big problem that we deal with, and that is cars that are inoperable, commercial vehicles within a residential district. Those are just a list of those things. Now, I want to walk you through our processes and what we do and how we do it. So, the inspector goes out, they see a violation. In that violation that they see, they have options as to how they will approach it and deal with it. So, one of the biggest thing that they do is to give the owner a notification of what they've done wrong and what they need to correct. Each one of those have a time process when that citizen must come into compliance. So if you look at it from that, so if I went to a home and it was a junky yard, and I'm going to give you 2 weeks, you got 2 weeks to clear that up. Okay, cut your grass, get all the trash and debris out of it. If it is an inoperable vehicle that's wrecked, that's on the property, and we generally give you 10 days to remove that. Now, if it's raw sewage, anything that's considered an emergency, raw sewage, no heat, you get 24 to 48 hours to bring that into compliance. And so as we go through that process, that's what happens. That's what occurs with the blight that code enforcement deal with. So imagine yourself, you driving down the street, and so how would a regular citizen know what is blight? Anything that devalues your community or your neighborhood is considered blight. And so that is one of the biggest things that we need to address. And when we see it, one of the processes that we utilize is that we teach our inspectors, look, you may get a complaint through 311 and you're driving to get there. Do not drive past blight and not address it. So as we are changing our approach to the remediation of blight, that is generally how it's being done with us. So now, once we've gotten to that point, we've issued them something. They haven't come into compliance. Then what are the next steps that we do? Well, the next step is, hey, you didn't come into compliance, now we summons you to court. So now, once it gets to court, it's out of our hands. We have court inspectors that go to court to follow it through from what the field inspectors have already sent from their sub districts to get into court. So that's the process of what we do and how we do it. So as we go through that, that's generally what happens. So at this point, if there are any questions for me of the process, how we do what we're doing, I am open for those questions.
So Beverly, do we have any questions?
Beverly, do we have any questions?
There was, and
I can only.
I'm getting some feedback. I think we're good. I only see one question, and that was about getting in touch with City Beautiful to assist with, from the city with bulk pickup and help the city help with illegal dumping on city property. And David has responded to that person. I do see someone wanting Mr. Jones's contact information. Could you give that to us?
Commissioner Jones? We
And
can't-
then-
you're on mute, Commissioner.
You're on mute, Commissioner.
It says the host unmuted me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
All right, so here's my office number, 901-636-7451. Now, if you can't get me there, here's the cell number, 901-573-2343.
Okay, so I don't really.
Gail,
Yes,
there's another question. There's another question and it's asking if you have code violations, do you want them reported to 311 directly? Mr. Jones.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
We can.
We can.
All right, so there's a couple of ways to do that. We prefer you send it in through 311. However, you can call us direct to the code enforcement office, 901-636-2136. So you can contact us through there, but we prefer 311. However, we will address it when it comes directly to us.
Just have another question.
Have
Why does
another
it
question.
take more than one person?
Why does it
Why does it take more than one person to get an action on a complaint or issue from 311? And that's probably for you, Commissioner Jones.
Okay, can you ask me that question again so I can, because it sounded like I had feedback.
Why does it take more than
Why
one
does it take more than one
person to get an action or complaint
person
or
to get
issue
an
from
action or complaint
311?
issue from 311?
I'm not sure about 311 processes. I know you'll call in, they'll answer your call. I know they will take your complaint and then they put it into the system and forward it out to the right department. Once it leaves 311, it would come to, if it's meant for code enforcement, it'll come to us. And then it would go to the proper sub-district for that inspector to handle that complaint. And depending on what the complaint is, once the inspector gets out there, hopefully it's something that the field inspector could handle. But once again, it may come to us and it might need to go to commercial, or it may need to go to environmental enforcement. We do have the ability, if a field inspector goes out, to send it straight to each one of those departments.
I do have a question
I do have a question
for Mr. Burgess.
for Mr. Burgess.
For
Yes,
many,
ma'am.
for many years ago, Memphis received the City Beautiful Award from President Johnson's wife, who headed up the program. So that's been a very long time, and many people refer back to it. Do you see Memphis as returning to that anytime soon?
I would love to see it return to it many times soon. And yeah, I am familiar with that award from Lady Bird Johnson. And the city of Memphis also used to get awards as the cleanest city, but I can kind of elaborate on how that happened. Memphis City Beautiful would send in scrapbooks of all of the work that they did every year to keep America beautiful. And they would judge each city and see who it did the most by that work. And back in the day, Memphis used to have clean up, paint up, fix up. They'd had parades behind this. And this is when before City Beautiful was defunded by, I think it was Mayor Loeb in 1968. It was City Beautiful had between 18 and 25 employees. Now we have 5, and we just got the 5. For the longest, it was just 3 of us. And we had the entire city to try to provide resources too. But I think we can, if we can help get mentalities changed, and that's what we're working on, is as hard as we can. We're out almost every weekend, if not every weekend. We're out during the week with plantings and community beautifications and cleanups and providing resources where we can. We're a small office, we have a tiny budget, but we do what we can. We also do receive donations. Anything that's donated to us, the citizens receive 100% of it. We don't stockpile anything. And community partners who have worked with us can tell you, if you need anything for a cleanup, we can provide it. So we love to see a return to that. We think that we have the pride here. You see the pride behind our basketball team. We love to see some of that pride behind making this city a clean and beautiful place. And I think it's beautiful. It's a very beautiful city. It has potential. It just needs a little TLC, that's all.
Thank you, thank you for that. I do agree. And there are some areas in Memphis where people put a great deal of focus and love into what their communities look like. And so, Mr. Lockwood, you used to work with I guess you may still do with some of the community organizations like Fraser. So where are we as far as those communities that you work with? Have they improved? Are they the same, or have they gotten worse?
Well, I don't need to tell Eddie or David that illegal dumping is an awful problem, and as well as David talked about what we call picker piles. Those are the set out piles. It's hard to see that it's really improved, but I mean, I think there's still hope that we're putting systems in place. And I would say this, that I can speak for neighborhoods like Fraser, that the folks in those neighborhoods really care a lot about trying to make it better. It's just, it's a hard problem. I did want to say one other thing, or it's actually a question while I've got my mic on. I wanted to mention that a few years back, David helped me to get some very nice, permanently installed city trash cans up around Fraser CDC. And David, does that program still exist?
It is, but we're nearing the end of the cycle. We were only allotted funding for 100 cans, and currently we have between 95 and 100 adopted. We're waiting for the funding to clear for those last 25. Of that, we have 75 in the ground now, 25 that we're waiting for funding to clear. Of those 25, about 15 to 20 of them are already promised to community. So it's a little bit left in there. And I may be off by 5. It might be only 5 or 10 that's available. I need to go back and count. But yeah, it was very successful. It was more successful than people expected. And we were glad to see communities want them. And I ride around and look at them, and they're taking care of them. They're always filled, and I drive by the next day and it's empty. So that's positive. That means that litter or trash is not on the ground. So that's the positive thing.
I was very pleasantly surprised when we put them up. People really use them. We had a bus stop right out front. We had trash all the time because people would be eating something. They don't let you bring food on the bus, so they'd throw it on the ground. But now we have a trash can there. And just putting in a good word, I referred my daughter to you from Libertas School in Fraser, and hopefully you got some left over for her to apply to. But we'll see. Thanks, David.
So we do have one question. Hello, has there been any thoughts on creating some sort of compensation for recycling? For example, money for gas or money towards groceries?
I think that would be a Philip Davis of solid waste question. But as far as listening to Philip and Amanda speak, recycling is expensive. So that's one of the reasons why you don't see it as readily available in places, because it costs the people who do it a lot of money as well, because they have to sort it, make sure it's clean. And if it's not clean, they'll have to take those items to the landfill, which is a cost associated with that as well. I'd love to see some sort of incentive for citizens to recycle and clean up. That would be an awesome thing. So I think it couldn't hurt to suggest that to city council or whomever could implement that. But I think that's a great idea.
So we have a question also to Steve. Is there any type of assistance for residential or commercial property owners that need assistance to make repairs?
There is, but to be truthful, there's not nearly enough. There are occasional repair programs. I'd say the most significant at this point are Habitat and the Works CDC. And they oftentimes can be neighborhood specific. So while I'm not expert on the Works program, they may just be working up in Klondike, Smoky City and in that area, but I'm not positive. And the Habitat programs may just be for seniors. I'm the expert at either one. occasionally, I mean, in Fraser, we did 3 different programs, but over the years, we probably did 50 houses and we probably had 500 that needed it. So the backlogs are very big. One other note, there's an outfit called United Housing that has 0 interest loans, as far as I know, for rehab. So if you can borrow money at 0 interest, if you can afford to pay back a little bit, you could call United Housing for that. Clearly, the need outweighs the funding that we have, though. That's clear.
So is the funding based on income?
I would say virtually always yes. It would be low income or below. Low income is actually a technical term. It's 80 percentile of median, but the answer is yes. It's need based. Absolutely.
Okay, so Beverly, do you see any more new questions, either in the chat or in the Q&A?
I'm not seeing anything. Cynthia, do you see anything either?
No,
And I do have a question myself, and I guess this is for David. And Steve mentioned the trash cans, and so I often see trash cans that have been installed in the community. Whose responsibility is it to empty them? Because oftentimes when I see them, they're overflowing.
Well, the ones that are part of the adopted trash can program, those are the responsibility of the neighborhood associations. And sometimes when you ride by and they're full or overflowing, it can be misleading because it can be regular litter placed in the can. And all it takes is one person coming in from an unincorporated neighborhood to place their entire bag in it. And now it's overflowing or it gets torn up by an animal. But that adopter, all of our adopters are pretty good about servicing them. And we reach out to them when we ride by and check them. Like we'll get complaints about the cans and I'll ride out there and it'll be serviced. So, and it's usually the same thing, someone illegally dumping in those cans. So if you do see a full trash bag placed on top of that can, you can shoot me an email and I'll send it to environmental enforcement because technically that's illegal dumping. So that's one of the things that most of my adopters have dealt with, someone from an unincorporated area bringing their household trash because they don't have trash pickup to dispose of, and they just sit it in those cans or empty their stuff in those cans and cause it to overflow. The neighborhood associations do a pretty good job most times.
Okay, thank you for that response. We do have another question from Cheryl Ballard. Is there a plan to get landowners that we know how to contact to take care of their land? There are landowners that neglect their land because the land is not their community. Also, it's to piggyback on what Ms. Ballard is saying, we also have property owners, I guess, who have grass like 6 feet tall. And so how do you all handle those situations? Houses that have trees falling in them and no one lives there, they're just vacant homes.
Those should be reported to 311 and Mr. Jones may want to.
Yeah, so I thank you, Darren. So David, thank you. Here's what it is. For us, when grass gets 12 inches, it is a violation up under the code. We then, if it's an occupied structure, we basically send a notice to the homeowner, and then they will have a time frame to go ahead on and cut their grass. And the same process happens if they don't. It will cite in the court. If it's a vacant property and it's that way, we send it to our ground services. They will notify the owner and give it to them, and then they will push it forward to a cutting crew if they don't do it, and then place liens on the property. Large parcels of land and where you have a bunch of trees and grass and all of that, We generally do not deal with that, even though they may be bumping up. It's undeveloped land, it's just full of trees. And we normally don't do that unless it encroaches up on another residential property. And then we will come in and have them to remove it. Trees that have fallen down in the yards, we address that, and the homeowner, where the tree is actually at, let's say it could happen this way: fell from one yard, broke in half. So part of the tree is in one yard, part of the tree is in another yard. We will address both parcels and both owners and said, you have to remove it. Dead trees laying in yards create rodents and all of that. We do address those, and we make the homeowners clean them up.
Okay, so what about property where grass is very tall, but there is no address, there is no house there, but it's in between houses?
Vacant parcels, we would in turn send it to our ground services. Anything vacant, if it's vacant, high grass, and has a house, if it's vacant and it's just land, then it goes to ground services.
Okay, so next question, is there anything being done to reduce the red tape? Grass starts to grow at the beginning of the season, and oftentimes the grass doesn't get cut until the end of the season because of the red tape passing from one department to another.
Okay, so we're talking about the red tape. So here's the deal. Vacant. I'm going to show you how you'll know which department.
Mr. Jones, we can't hear you. Can you all hear Mr. Jones?
No, I think he's having some network issues
Okay.
because I'm not seeing his camera or anything.
Well, I saw his, well, yeah, his name is looking like it's gone. Let me see. Oh, I still see his name, but I don't see anything else.
And there's also another question in the Q&A, which is probably also addressed to Mr. Jones about accountability for churches giving property.
And they don't cut the grass gets so high, you now have trees. Maybe that's him. Well, we do have a couple of really good questions here. Okay, so with his technical issues, I don't know if he's going to be able to respond to the questions. The two questions left were pertaining to grass and accountability. So what we'll do now is just get some closing remarks and some tips and information from our guests to share with our audience. So Mr. Lockwood, we will start with you.
Obviously, there's a lot of concern about trash and abandoned properties. Each of us on this call have a different part of helping to solve those problems. But if you If you have particularly tough, and somebody mentioned, land that maybe you couldn't find the owner of, that's appropriate to contact us and we can start to work on that. And again, my email address is in the chat box, but it's steve@blightauthoritymemphis.org. Thanks.
Also, your area would handle that also, for people who can be located?
Yes, we have a relationship with Community Reinvestment Agency and can use eminent domain if there are long-term blighted properties where the owners can't be found. Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's an important tool that we have. That's right. Thanks.
Okay, so next we will move to Mr. Burgess. I want to greatly thank you for providing information you have today. Do you have some closing remarks, some tips, some information that you would like to share with our guests today?
Sure, I don't mind. I appreciate you guys having me here, and it was my pleasure to speak. It's always good to be able to meet and pass along little bits of information. But if you have any questions about anything, or if your question didn't get answered here today, shoot me an email and I can send it to the correct department, even if it's something that we don't handle per se. And I know Eddie was getting ready to elaborate on the grass cutting as well. But yeah, any questions you have, if you have issues with litter, illegal dumping, it's all in neighborhood improvement, which code is a part of neighborhood improvement, and so is Memphis City Beautiful. So we're one big family, and we don't mind passing along questions and information from one department to another. And we're glad to be here. Like I said, if you have any questions for me, my email is davidm.burgess@memphistn.gov. That's davidm.burgess, BURGESS @memphistn.gov. And Ms. Carson, I have a question for you afterwards. It doesn't have to be on here though.
Okay, do you want me to put my number in the chat?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I want, so I do want to thank you very much for being on with us and sharing this valuable information. I'm hoping that one day we can get back to the city beautiful we once were. And Mr. Lockwood, I also want to thank you, and also thank Mr. Eddie Jones, who works in code enforcement. He's a supervisor there. So our next webinar on.
Yeah.
Yes.
And also, Mr. Jones said that we will forward any of the unanswered questions to him, and so he can get those answers, and we will forward those back to those individuals who were registered today.
Okay, thank you for that, Belvin. So I want to thank staff for the work that they do on our empowering sustainable neighborhoods. Belvin Perkins and Terica and Cynthia, Haley and Darren and Nathan and everyone else who works on here. If I left off anybody, charge it to my head, not to my heart. So we do these quarterly. The next one will be June 30th, and the topic will be stopping the leak. On August 18th, we will be doing renting with power. And on October the 27th, the last one for this year, we will focus on owning a smart home. So I think that is all that we have for today. And again, thank you so very much for being with us today.